أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم
Surah 51.
Az-Zariyat.
Title: Az-Zariyat is the opening word of this surah. It thus signifies the surah in which the expression
Az-Zariyat
occurs. Period of revelation. It is clear from the content and style of this surah that it was revealed in the period when the Prophet's message was subject to the unbelievers' intense rejection and their false charges against him. However, the Muslims had not yet faced any persecution, so it must have been sent down in the same period in which Surah Qaf was revealed. Subject matter and themes. Most of this surah is devoted to describing the doctrine of the hereafter. Its concluding part includes a call to monotheism. The addressees are warned that rejecting the messengers and clinging to Jahiliyyah notions would prove to be the bane of unbelieving communities. Brief yet pithy statements of this surah underscore the truth about the hereafter, that the diversity of notions about the end of man's life betrays the lack of definite or certain knowledge about this issue. Each group has its own speculations, which over time become articles of their faith. Some hold that there is no life after death. Some subscribe to the idea of the cycle of death and rebirth. Some affirm the doctrines of the hereafter and divine recompense, but resorted to the ideas of their supporters and intercessors in order to escape from divine punishment. Man's false notion about such a crucial issue puts his life on a wrong course and ruins his prospects in the next life. It is a colossal and devastating fallacy to entertain a belief that stems from mere speculation, for it leads to a life spent neglecting the basic truth. After death, such a life will suddenly encounter a situation for which it was not at all prepared. The only true way to hold a belief on such a crucial matter is to abide by the information given by the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, on the authority of Allah. One should better reflect on his message and observe the workings of the universe and his own self. This will convince him of the truth of the Prophet's teachings on this issue. The arrangements for rain and wind, the composition of the earth, the presence of numerous creatures on the planet, including man's own self, the creation of the sky, and the presence of all living beings in pairs are cited as proofs for the hereafter. Illustrations from history are cited in this surah to impress the truth that the working of the universe itself demands that there be some recompense for man's actions. It is followed by a brief call to monotheism. The surah states that Allah has created human beings to serve Him, not anyone else. Unlike the false gods, He does not demand any sustenance from His worshippers. On the contrary, He provides sustenance to everyone. He runs the affairs of the universe on His own. The surah then points out that the messengers of Allah have never been challenged on any valid grounds. Driven by their pride and arrogance and Jahiliyyah notions about their supremacy, unbelievers have rejected truth all along. Their rebellion against Allah accounts for it. The Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, is advised not to pay attention to these rebels. He should therefore engage in dawah and keep reminding people of God consciousness in order to benefit believers. As for the unjust wicked ones who persist in their error, they should realize that God's punishment is ready, awaiting them. The unbelievers of yore have been already punished.
Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim.
In the name of Allah, the most merciful, the most compassionate.
وَالذَّارِيَاتِ ذَرْوًا.
By the winds which scatter dust,
فَالْحَامِلَاتِ وِقْرًا.
which carry clouds laden with water.
1. All the commentators agree that Az-Zariyat implies the winds that disperse and raise up the dust, and Al-Hamilati Wikran implies the winds that lift up millions of tons of water vapors from the oceans in the form of clouds. This same commentary has been reported from Umar, Ali, Abdullah bin Abbas, Abdullah bin Umar, and also from Mujahid, Sa'id bin Jubair, Hassan Basri, Qatada, Sadi and other scholars.
فالجاريات يسرا
which then smoothly speed along,
فالمقسمات أمرا
and execute the great task of apportioning rainfall.
2. The commentators have disputed the commentary of Al-Zariyat Yusran and Al-Muqassimati Amran. One group has preferred the view, or held this meaning as admissible, that by these two also are meant the winds, that is, the same very winds then transport the clouds, and spreading over different parts of the earth, distribute the water as and where required according to Allah's command. The other group holds that Al-Zariyat Yusran implies fast-moving boats, and Al-Muqassimati Amran implies the angels who distribute among the creatures their shares of the provisions according to Allah's command. According to a tradition, Umar explained this very meaning of these two sentences and said, "Had I not heard this from the Prophet, peace be upon him, I would not have mentioned it." On this very basis, Allama Alusi has expressed the opinion that it is not permissible to take any other meaning of these sentences than this, and those who have taken any other meaning have taken undue liberties. But Hafiz ibn Kathir says that this tradition has weak links of the transmitters, and on its basis it cannot be said with absolute certainty that the Prophet, peace be upon him, might himself have given this commentary of these sentences. There is no doubt that from a good number of the companions and their immediate followers only this second commentary has been reported, but a good number of the commentators have given the first commentary also, and it fits in better with the context. Shah Rafiuddin, Shah Abdul Qadir and Maulana Mahmud al-Hassan also have preferred the first meaning in their translations of the Quran.
إنما توعدون لصادق.
Surely, what you are being warned against is true.
3. The word used in the original is toaduna. If it is derived from wad, the meaning would be, that which you are promised, and if it is from wade, it would mean, that which you are threatened with. As regards the context, the second meaning is preferable, for the addressees are the people who were lost in disbelief, polytheism and sin, and were not prepared to believe that they would be held accountable sometime in the future, and would be rewarded or punished accordingly. That is why we have taken toaduna in the meaning of wade, threaten, and not of wad, promise.
وَإِنَّ الدِّينَ لَوَاقِعٌ.
And the judgment shall doubtlessly take place.
4. This is the thing for which the oath has been sworn. The oath implies this: the unique order and regularity with which the wonderful system of the rain is functioning before your eyes, and the wisdom and good reasons which clearly underlie it, testify to the reality that this world is not a meaningless and useless toy house where the great drama of life is being presented at random since millions and millions of years. But it is, in fact, a wise system of the highest order in which everything that happens has a purpose and reason behind it. In this system it is not possible that a creature like man should have been given intellect, senses and the powers to exploit things to advantage, should have been granted moral sense to distinguish the good and evil, right and wrong deeds, and then might have been left alone foolishly and meaninglessly in the world to behave as he pleased. And that he should never be questioned as to how he had used and employed the powers of the heart, and mind and body, the vast means placed at his disposal to work in the world, and the power and authority granted to him to employ the countless creatures of God to his advantage. In this system of the universe where everything is purposeful, how can the creation of a unique being like man only be purposeless? In a system where everything is based on wisdom, how can the creation of man only be useless and futile? The purpose of the creation of those things which do not possess consciousness and intellect is fulfilled in this very physical world. Therefore, it would be right and reasonable if they were destroyed after they had reached the end of their life term, for they have not been granted any powers and authority for which they might have to be called to account. But a creature which possesses intellect and consciousness and authority, whose activities are not confined only to the physical world, but are also moral in nature, and whose actions entailing moral consequences do not take place only till the end of life, but continue to register their moral effects on it even after death, cannot be destroyed like plants and animals just after it has fulfilled the function of its physical existence, whatever good or evil act he has committed by his own will. and choice, he must get the reward or suffer the punishment for it justly and equitably. For this is the basic requirement of the factor under which, contrary to other creatures, he has been endowed with the freedom of choice and will. If he is not held accountable, if he is not rewarded or punished according to his moral acts, and if he is also destroyed at the conclusion of his physical life like the creatures which have been given no freedom of will and choice, his creation would inevitably be altogether futile, and a wise being cannot be expected to indulge in a futile exercise. Besides, there is also another reason for swearing an oath by these four phenomena of the universe regarding the occurrence of the hereafter, and the meting out of rewards and punishments. The ground on which the deniers of the hereafter regard the life after death as impossible is this: when we are mixed up with dust after death, and our particles have scattered away in the earth, how can it be possible that all these scattered particles of the body are reassembled, and we are made to rise up again? The error of this apprehension is by itself removed when we consider deeply the four phenomena of the universe, which have been presented as an argument for the hereafter. The rays of the sun have their effect on all the collections of water on the surface of the earth, where their heat reaches. In this process countless drops of water evaporate from the collection, but they do not become extinct, and every drop remains preserved in the air as vapors. When Allah commands, the same wind gathers the same vapors of the drops together, combines them into thick clouds, spreads those clouds on different parts of the earth, and precisely at the time appointed by Allah causes each single drop to fall back to the earth in the form as it was in the beginning. This phenomenon that is occurring before the eyes of man daily testifies that the particles of the bodies of the dead men can also gather together at one command by Allah, and the men can be raised up in the shape in which they lived before. Whether these particles are in the dust, or in the water, or in the air, in any case they remain preserved in this very earth and its atmosphere. Why should it be difficult for the God who gathers together the vapors of water after they had dispersed in the air, by means of the same air, and then causes them to rain as water, to gather together the scattered particles of the human bodies from the air, water, and earth, and then combine them in their original form and shape?
وَالسَّمَاءِ ذَاتِ الْحُبُكِ
By the heaven with its numerous forms.
5. The word hubuk in the original is also used for the paths and for the waves which are produced on the sand of the desert and the surface of stagnant water by the wind. It is also spoken for the curls and wavy hair. Here, the sky has been characterized by hubuk either because the sky is often overcast with clouds of different shapes, which go on changing because of the wind, and no shape lasts nor resembles any other, or because at night one sees the stars scattered in the sky in many different combinations and no combination resembles any other combination.
إِنَّكُمْ لَفِي قَوْلٍ مُخْتَلِفٍ
Surely, you are at variance about the hereafter.
6. The oath has been sworn by the sky of various appearances on this difference of views because of the similarity. That is, just as the clouds and the clusters of stars in the sky have different appearances and there is uniformity among them, so are also your views about the hereafter, each different from the other. Someone says that this world is eternal and no resurrection can take place. Another says that this system is not eternal and can come to an end in the course of time, but whatever becomes extinct, including man, cannot possibly be resurrected. Another one regards resurrection as possible but holds the belief that man, in order to be requited for his good and evil deeds, is born and reborn again and again in this very world. Someone believes in hell and heaven but combines the transmigration of the souls also with it. He thinks that the sinner goes to hell to suffer the punishment as well as is born and reborn in this world for the sake of the punishment. Someone says that the life in the world is in itself an agony. As long as man's self remains attached to physical life, he goes on dying and taking birth again and again in this very world, and his real salvation is that he should attain annihilation. Someone believes in the hereafter in hell and heaven, but says that God by giving death to his only Son on the cross had atoned for the original sin of man, and man will escape the evil consequences of his evil acts by believing in the Son. Some other people generally believe in the hereafter, and the meting out of the rewards and punishments, but at the same time regard certain holy men as the intercessors, who are such favorites of Allah, or wield such influence with him, that anyone who attaches himself to them as a disciple can escape the punishment whatever he may do in the world. About these holy men there is also no agreement among their devotees. Every group of them has its own separate intercessor. This difference of the views itself is a proof that whenever man has formed an opinion about his own and the world's end, independent of revelation and prophethood, he has formed it without knowledge. Otherwise, if man in this regard really had some direct means of knowledge, there would not have arisen so many different and contradictory beliefs.
يؤفك عنه من أفك.
Though only those who are averse to the truth will turn away from believing in it.
7. The pronoun of anhu in this sentence either turns to the meting out of the rewards and punishments, or to various views. In the first case, it means, the meting out of the rewards has to take place, in spite of your holding different beliefs about it, but only such a person is perverted from it who has turned away from the truth. In the second case, the meaning is, only such a one is misled by these different views, who has turned away from the truth.
قتل الخراصون.
Doomed are the conjecturers.
8. Here the Quran is warning man of an important truth. To judge or make an estimate on the basis of conjecture and speculation in the ordinary matters of worldly life may be useful to some extent, although it would be no substitute for knowledge, but it would be disastrous to make estimates and give judgments merely according to one's own conjectures and speculations in a question of such fundamental nature and importance as whether we are, or are not, responsible and accountable to anyone for the deeds and actions of our lifetime, and if we are, to whom are we accountable, when and what shall be the accountability, and what will be the consequences of our success and failure in that accountability. This is not a question on which man may form an estimate merely according to his conjecture and speculation, and then stake his entire life capital on the gamble. For if the conjecture proves to be wrong, it would mean that the man has doomed himself to utter ruin. Furthermore, this question is not at all included among those questions about which one may form a right opinion by the exercise of analogy and conjecture, for conjecture and analogy can work only in those matters which are perceptible for man, whereas this is a question which does not come under perception in any way. Therefore, it is not at all possible that a conjectural and analogical judgment about it may be right and correct. As for the question, what is the right way for man to form an opinion about the matters which are no perceptible and incomprehensible in nature? This has been answered at many places in the Quran, and from this surah also the same answer becomes obvious, and it is this: 1. Man himself cannot reach the reality directly. 2. Allah gives the knowledge of the reality through His prophets. 3. Man can ascertain the truth of that knowledge in this way. He should study deeply the countless signs that are found in the earth and heavens and in his own self. Then consider seriously and impartially whether those signs testify to the reality that the Prophet B.S. presented, or to the different ideologies that the other people have presented in this regard. This is the only method of scientific investigation about God and the hereafter that has been taught in the Quran. Doomed would be the one who discarded this method and followed his own analogies and conjectures.
الذين هم في غمرة ساهون.
Who are steeped in ignorance and heedlessness.
9. That is, they do not know what fate they are heading for on account of their wrong conjectures, whereas every way that is adopted with a wrong view of the hereafter only leads to ruin. He who is a denier of the hereafter is not at all preparing himself for any accountability, and is engrossed in the thought that there would be no life after death, whereas the time would suddenly come when against all this expectations he would open his eyes in the new life and he would realize that there he has to render an account of each of his acts and deeds. The person who is spending his life under the idea that he would come back to this very world after death, will come to know as soon as he dies that all doors of return are closed, that there is no chance of compensating for the misdeeds of the previous life by any new actions, and that there is another life ahead in which he has to meet with and suffer the consequences of his worldly life forever after. The person who commits suicide in the hope that after he has destroyed his self and its desires he would escape the agony of life in the form of total annihilation, will find as soon as he passes through the gate of death that there is an everlasting life ahead and not mortality, where he has to explain as to why he had been straining every nerve to destroy the self that he had been blessed with instead of developing and adorning it in every possible way. Likewise, the one who continued committing disobedience of Allah throughout life, placing reliance upon some son of Allah's becoming an atonement, or some holy one's becoming an intercessor, will come to know as soon as he appears before Allah that there is neither any atoner there nor any one wielding such influence and power that he may save him from Allah's grasp and punishment by means of his own power and influence. Thus, all these conjectural creeds are, in fact, an opiate under the intoxication of which these people are lying senseless, and do not know where they are being misled by the ignorance which they have adopted by rejecting the true knowledge given by God and His prophets.
يسألون أيان يوم الدين.
They ask, when will the day of judgment be?
يوم هم على النار يفتنون.
It will be the day when they shall be scourged by the fire.
10. The disbelievers did not ask the question, when will be the resurrection? For the sake of seeking knowledge but for the purpose of taunt and ridicule. That is why they have been given such an answer. It is just like the taunting reaction of the wicked person who is admonished to desist from his immoral deeds, otherwise he would meet with the evil consequences of those deeds one day, and he asks in jest, when will that day be? Obviously, such a question is not asked to know the date of the occurrence of the evil end but to make fun of the admonition. Therefore, its right answer is that it will occur when the evildoers will meet with their doom. Besides, one should also understand well that if a denier of the hereafter is discussing the question of the hereafter sensibly, he can dispute the arguments in favor and against it, but he can never ask the question, on what date will the hereafter occur, unless he has lost all reason. Whenever he puts such a question, it will only be as a taunt and ridicule. For it does not at all affect the real discussion whether the date of the occurrence of the hereafter is stated or not. No one can deny the hereafter only because the year and the month and the day of its occurrence have not been given, nor can one believe in it on hearing that it will occur on such and such a day of such and such a month and year. The date is no argument that may cause a denier to be convinced of its coming, for after that the question will arise, how can one believe whether on that particular day the hereafter will actually occur?